Hi, this is Ziad Ali with a new tutorial on using functions in Python. Let's start with the simplest functions first. We will write few functions here. All are void. First one, write a function that prints the values from 1 to 100. This function receives no parameters and returns nothing. It just accomplishes a task which is printing values from 1 to 100. So here we are writing our first function, which is a Python function that prints values between 1 and 100. Def function name, let's call it print 100, and takes no parameters, colon. So this function will simply go from 1 to 101 for I in range 1, 101, print I. Done. If I want to call the function, I just call it with print 100 from anywhere in your code. So now we'll call this function and it should print values from 1 to 100. As you see here, values between 1 and 100 were printed. The second function, write a function that asks the user to enter the radius of a circle. So you will do the input inside a function and then calculates and prints the area of a circle. So your function will ask the user to input radius. The function takes no parameters and returns no values. So let's say a def print circle area, takes no parameters. First thing, you need the radius. So you ask the user to enter the radius, which is going to be a float, input, and enter radius. Once you get the radius, you can then calculate the area, which is equal to pi times radius times radius. The question says print, calculates and prints the area. So now you can just print area is equal to area. Let me call this function here print circle area. The function takes no parameters. Let me just comment the first one I did, control slash, and now I will call the function here and it should ask me for an input, and here enter radius. I'll enter any valid value and the function prints the area. Third one is similar. Write a function that asks the user to enter base and height of a triangle. Again, takes no parameters, returns no values. Then it calculates and prints the area. So let's do here def print try area, no parameters. You need two things here, base is equal to float, input, enter base, and then you need to get the height from the user. Again, it's float and same step, enter height. That's it. Once you have both of them, you can calculate the area, which is 0.5 times base times height. And let's also print it. Comma area. I need to call the function here print try area, no arguments, and let me comment the previous one. So now only print area is called, print triangle area is called. So here we are entering base 10, 4.5. That's it. Let us see the next one. Write a function that prints the sum of values in a range. The range means you have start and end. So this function will ask you to enter the starting value of the range the ending value, and then the function finds the sum of those values. Let's do this. Def print sum range, no arguments, start, which is the starting value, integer, input, enter starting value, and end equals integer, input, enter ending value. That's it. You can do validation if you want, like while end is not greater than start, you can ask the user to input them again. Let's do it. While end is less than, so I mean if he enters wrong values, while end is less than start, you can just give him an error message, print end value must be less than start. Please enter again, and again takes the same two inputs again and again until the values are fine. So this loop will continue until the user inputs valid range. So now, once you have the values entered correctly, you need to initialize your accumulator, sum equals to 0. Then just say for I in, or for number in range, your range is going to be from start to end plus 1. End plus 1, so the value of end is calculated. Your sum is going to be equal sum plus equal number. That's it. So it will go from, let us say, 10 to 20, sum 10, 11, 20, until you reach 20, and finally you print sum. And let's just give it a message before sum. Let's just make sure no other functions are called. Print triangle area here. Let's comment it. Okay, and now call the last function, which is print sum range. Takes no arguments, or here, let us run it. Let me enter wrong values, 10 and 1. You get an error message that end value must be less than start. So 10 and 20, the sum is 165. So these are all basic functions. They receive no parameters, no arguments sent from the program, and they do some calculations and print a result. And also they have no return data. We call functions that returns no data void function. Next, we'll be seeing functions that receive parameters from users and return some one or more piece of data. Here is another function that needs us to provide two pieces of data, parameters to the function. We need to calculate calories from fat and carbohydrates. Write a function that calculates the total number of calories that result from fat and carbs. From fat, it's 9 calories per gram, and from carb is going to be 4 calories per gram. The function takes two float parameters, fat and carb grams. So we need to send the function two values. The function at the end returns the total calories. So our function, let's call it a def get calories. Takes two parameters, fat, grams, and carb, grams. So you can now just calculate the total grams or total calories. Total calories equals fat grams times 9 plus carb grams times 4. Simple calculation. Return total calories. That's it. So our function now is going to receive two values and will return 1 to the caller. So this is the function now. Let's try to see how to use it. Let's say, let's just make a fat equals float. This is outside the function. Input how many grams of fat, and we do the same thing for carb. Here, carb, how many grams of carb. Now I have the two values. I can call the function, but I need to make sure that the value returned from the function is stored somewhere. I can say here calories equals, I will call the function get calories, sending the parameters or arguments here, we call them in order, carb. That's it. So now your program starts here at line 12. You input the fat, then carb, then you call the function with those two values, fat and carb. The function calculates total calories and returns the values. So at the end, what will be stored in calories in line 14, whatever value returns from the function will be stored in the variable calories. Let's just output it. Print total calories equals calories. Let me run the function. How many grams of fat? 10 and 20. Total calories 170. 10 times 90, 9 is 90, 20, 80, yes, right? This value is returned here. So at the end, calories will be equal to this value. So this function received two parameters and returned 1. Now we're going to write a function that returns more than one value. Our function is max, min, and average. It will receive 3 values, and this function needs to return 3 values also. They need to return the maximum value, the minimum value, and the average of the 3 numbers. So our function will receive 3 parameters and return 3 results, let us say. Maximum, minimum, and their average. Our function must also check if any 2 values passed to it are equal. Otherwise, it cannot do the comparison. So we'll write actually another function that tells us if any 2 are equal. Let's go and see the code. First of all, I will write a function def is equal, I'll call it. This function will receive any 3 values, a, b, c. This one will return true if any 2 are equal. So let us do this. If a is equal to b, or b is equal to c, or c is equal to a, if any of these is true, then return what? True. Else, the function returns what? False. So I created my own utility function now. This function will tell us if they are equal or not. Let's do our main function, which is get some results. Let's say I'll call the function get comparison, any valid name. This function will receive 3 values, a, b, and c. So before I start comparison, it would be better if I check if any 2 are equal. So I can call the previous function I just created if is equal, and send A, comma, B, comma, C. If this function returns true, I can print an error message or whatever. Two values or more are equal. Else, I can now start working. I will say maximum is equal to A if B is greater than max, then max is equal to B, and one more if let me just correct the code here, the indentation. Okay, one more if I need here. If C is greater than max, then max is equal to C. So now I know the largest number. I will do the minimum value the same way. I'll copy this. I'll say also minimum is equal to the first one. If B is less than minimum, then minimum is equal to B. And if C is less than minimum, then minimum is equal to C. I will also find the average, AVG, is equal A plus B plus C divided by 3. So now I have the maximum, I have the minimum, and I have the average. I need to know the order in which I need to return them. Let us say max, minimum, and AVG. So this function returns multiple values. First one is maximum, second is minimum, third is average. So the function checks first for equality. So we see a function that uses another one. Otherwise, it starts the processing. Let's just now call the function here. I will just call it with values. For example, x is equal to integer, enter a value, and I will do y and z. So I have 3 values here. Now I need to know the order in which the function returns values, and we will go and make some changes to the function. I can receive the return data at the same time, the same order, max value, min value, comma, avg value is equal to, I will call the function which is get comparison, for example, and here I will give it xyz. So now I will call the function with xyz. I'm expecting max, minimum, and average, and they will be stored in the same order. There'll be some wrong thing here because sometimes the function would not return anything. So let me just do here, just try to print max and comma max value comma minimum and minimum value comma average and finally avg value. So let's do it first with the correct results. I see some error here. Integer enter a value, line 27. Okay, input is missing, and I need to just correct this, and here I just copy paste it since the text is the same. Run. Okay, enter value 10, 999, and -2. So maximum is 999, minimum is -2, and average is this much. The problem would be If you call the function with valid or two equal values, and the function then returns nothing, because this will be true, the function will print this and return nothing. So let me just do this and show you what's going to happen. I will run this. I will enter 10, 10, and 10. I get an error because the function does not return anything, but here I'm expecting the function to do the results. So it would be much better if I do this comparison before I call the function. Outside, let's see this here. I will remove this from here. I will just decrease indentation inside the function. Shift tab. It should be fine now. I can come here and say if is equal xyz, if not is equal, of course. Here I will say if not is equal. Yani if it's only false, I will do this, and or if is equal, print else. I can now do this. So now I will check before calling the function. If any two are equal, I will print this message and that's it. If it's not, if the function is equal, return false, I will go and do this here. Let's do this now. 10, 10, 10. We just get the error message, but the program does not generate any exception. Let's run it now with unequal values. 10, 7, 7, 7, and minus 56. So we get correct values. This time we're going to do a function that gets the score of a student in a course and returns the letter grade according to this table. 90 to 100 A, 80 to 89 B, and so on. Below 60 is going to be F. We'll not do validation here, we'll do it in the next one. Let's do it in code. So our function is going to receive a score. So let me call the function getGrade and here score. If score is greater than or equal to 90, return A. Now we need a L if score is greater than or equal to 80, return B, and continue doing the same thing until we reach F. L if again, score is greater than or equal to 70, return C. LF score is greater than or equal to 60, return D. Else return F. That's it. Let's see here, we need spelling error. Else we need here return F. That's it. Our function gets a score and it returns a letter grade. Let's just test it. For example, grade is equal to get grade 94, print grade. Let's see what gets printed. We get A. Let's do it 11. We need to get F here, and that's it. You can provide your own validation, and that has already been explained in many other tutorials. Next one is factorial, which is a common question when it comes to loops and functions. Our factorial here, it should be a non-negative number. We need to validate it inside the function. Now we will validate it. If the value is a negative number, we will return -1. Otherwise, we will return the factorial. The last point says, use the function to print factorials of numbers from 1 to 10. So we'll call the function in a loop. Once we validate it, we call it in a loop. Def get factorial of n. Let's do it using a range. First, we need to start a factorial with 1, since multiplication is going to be done, not addition. For I in range 1 to n plus 1, because we need to multiply with n. If the user inputs 5, we need to also multiply 5. So here I can say fact is equal to fact times I. That's it. Our factorial is ready. Return fact. However, we still need to do validation. All of this should not be done if the factorial of n is negative. So let us just, before we do this, we say if n is less than 0, factorial of 0 is 1, by the way, return -1. This is done. Else we will indent this. We'll indent it. That's it. So now you send the value to the factorial function. If it's negative, it will send you -1. Otherwise, it will process the factorial. Let us just test it here. F is equal to get fact of 5. Fact of 5 is 120. Print F. I expect to get 120. Run this now. 120. Let's send -1, -5. That's it. The question says, use the function to print factorials from 1 to 10. And this is very simple. For I in range 1 to 11, print get factorial of I. So now the get fact function will be called 10 times from 1 to 10. Whatever returned from the function will be printed. And let us just make a better output here. I can say I space I and the symbol of factorial and then comma. So this should be like we get the value and it's factorial. Let's run this and see what happens. We get a nice output here. Factorial of 1 is 1, 2 is 2, 3 is 6, and this is the beauty of using functions. We can call them from anywhere. This time we're going to create a function that calculates the value you see in this series. And by the way, it should be simple. It's not complicated. N is a non-negative value. Let's look at it. The series says 1 over n plus 2 over n minus 1. N minus 2, and finally you reach 1. So the top value will go from 1 to n. The lower value will start from n to 1. And by the way, this is not a nested loop. Only one loop is needed, because you calculate the value only once. And you do one iteration for each value, not n iterations or ik iterations. Let's see this in code. Let's think while we are writing it. Let's call the function get series sum. And it takes a value, let's say n. First, I need to find the sum, so let's start something with 0. Now look at it. The top value goes from 1 to n. The lower value decreases from n to 1. So you only need, by the way, one loop, which is either the top one or the lower one. Let's see one way of doing it. I would say top is equal 1. And now let's do the bottom value in a decreasing order in a loop for bottom in range n all the way to 0 because I need 1, so I will use 0 minus 1. So now we know that bottom will go from n to 1 in a decrementing order. So what's the first value? The first value should be 1 over n. So I can say here sum is equal to sum plus top, which is now 1, over what? Bottom. So first time, I know this is going to be 1 over n. Now I can say increment top. Of course, no need to decrement bottom because bottom loop already goes in a descending order. That's it. If you look at it now, top will go from 1 to n, and n or bottom will go from n to 1. To make sure we are doing the right thing, let us just print them. Top, comma, sorry, and here I will say bottom. And let me just do separator. I don't want them in a separate line. Separator is equal to plus sign. Let me just call the function with a small value. I will not return anything, just call it with a get series sum. I'll use 5. So I need to see the output here, if I'm doing the right thing or the wrong thing. It should be 1 over 5, then 2 over 4, then 3 over 2 and 3 and so on. Let's see the output. Good. 1 over 5, 2 over 4, 3. Let me remove the plus sign here. It's just making noise. Excellent here. And we're getting this. And let's say end is equal to plus, not separator. End is equal to plus. Okay, 1 over 5 plus 2 over 4, and then 3 over 3. Yes, the top one is increasing and the lower one is decreasing. And finally, you have 5 over 1, which is what we want here, n over 1. That's it. So our values are right here. Maybe this is just making it. Okay, here. 1 over 5, 2 over 4, 3 over 3. That's it. Let us try it with 30, for example. Just try it with 30. 1 over 30, 229, and finally we get 30 over 1. Perfect. That's it. So now we need to return the sum. Return sum. And that's it. Let's say sum is equal to get series sum. And I can just print sum here. Let's just run it with 30. Okay, comma is needed here. Run. This is the sum, which is good. Let me just remove this debugging output and run again here. I get this value. Correct. This time we're going to do a function to tell us if a number is a prime or not. A prime number is only divisible by 1 and itself. So if the number is divisible by any other value, then it's not a prime number. This function, the one we are going to create, should return either true or false. And it's an interesting one. And you need to know how to calculate the prime number. You need to start dividing it on values from 2 to n minus 1. If it divides without any remainder, then it's not a prime number. Let's see. Usually the functions that return true or false starts with is. So let's call the function is prime and give it a value. Our loop will be going from 4, let's say I in range, to all numbers are divisible by 1, to n integer division 2. Why I'm doing this? Because numbers are not divisible by more than its half. If you send 10, no need to continue after 5, because no number is going to be divisible by more than its half. Now what we're going to do here, if n modulus I is equal to 0, which means no remainder of division, then this number is not prime. We return false. The program doesn't continue after you provide return. And let's see here, return true. How this thing works. If the value is divisible by any value in this range, then the function returns false and it doesn't continue, which is good here. Let's test it first. Let's say print is prime 10. We should get either true or false. 10 is not prime. 11 is. We get true. Let's say 13, which is prime. True. Let's see 7, which is prime also. We get true. 29. I think let me start with small values like 2. 2 is prime, by the way. Let's see 4. 4 is prime, and there's the problem. That's why I was testing. I think here we need to say plus 1. Divide the number to, so now we get false. So 4 will be divided from 2 to 2. 2 is calculated here. Otherwise, 4 will not be divided into the right values. So now let's just make sure all values are right. So here it says, write a function that print all prime numbers between 1, or write a loop, not a function, to print all the prime numbers between 1 and 100. This is simple. For I in range 1, 101, if is prime I, if the function returns true, we then print I. So we do not print all other numbers. So here what we get a list of all the prime numbers between, which is 1, 2, 3, 5, 7. Yeah, it's working fine. These are the prime numbers between 1 and 100. They're only printed if the function returns true. So we have seen a variety of functions. Some are very simple. Some take no parameters. Some take parameters and return no values. Some return more than one value. Some will do validation inside. Some are validated before they called. It depends on what type of validation you are doing. Once you start writing programs using functions, you will never go back to the previous way or the procedural way of writing code. Definitely you will see functions again and again when it comes to files, lists, and almost every other topic in any programming language.